Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's been a long time to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Wos, and I'm joined by my comrade, aka Wos Nando. It's been so long, I forgot my damn
Yeah, you
intro.
forgot the intro. Come
I
on, man.
forgot to say what the people also know me as, my government name. And I'm joined as always by my homie, man, my brother, my comrade out on the west side, Nando Vila. What's up, man?
How's it going, baby? How you doing? It's been
Man,
a
I'm
while.
good.
I've been traveling, dude. I'm
You've
sorry.
been
I'm
doing a
sorry I missed the
lot,
show.
man. Abandoned your boy. Doing a lot
I'm
of you
sorry.
going to Spain, you popping the Tully and ride, you all over the damn place, man. It's crazy when you a mogul out here, boy.
Someone's got to bring home the bacon, you know?
That's right. That's right. And so on today's show, we try to talk about sports in a limited capacity, but every now and again a sports story happens that we have to address it. And it's Brett Favre and his homies raiding the welfare fund in Mississippi to basically fund his own endeavors. It's just an incredible story that has to do with like Deion Sanders and Brett Favre's
Yeah.
kid happened to play volleyball. It's the most ridiculous story, and just the misappropriation of government funds, and it's just a lot to it. We'll get into that at the end of the show. But I wanted to talk about something that I feel like to me is the hot button issue in politics right now. More so than inflation, more so than climate change, more so than the fucking fake CRT, critical race theory shit that we see that right wingers are trolling people with. To me, the crime situation in the country is like the hot button issue because everybody has an opinion and people are like passionate about crime. Even if it's the people that are like, chill, dude, it's not even as bad as it was in 1988. Like, relax, bro. Like, don't get your panties in a bunch, dude. Even those people who take that tack to what's happening with crime in this country are really passionate about that position.
Yeah.
And then of course, you got the abolitionists and you got the police reform. You got people that's just straight up like, we need to prosecute fucking criminals. Like, there's all kinds of sides of this, NATO. And I want to get into what made me want to talk about this. I was on Twitter, and a homie that I follow, I forget his name, but his at name is Queer Socialism. And he tweeted out something about, I can't believe the creator of The Wire try to get me to think mass incarceration is, but he used, the kind of language that people use, right? It's like, like the he used the snarky language that's in fashion with people on the left. I don't recommend using that language because it's legible to people like me and Nando and most of the people that might listen to the show, but it's just inaccessible and it comes off a certain way. Even if you're right, like, you're wrong, right? In those instances, that's just our position here at the Woke Pros. Like, don't do that. Whatever. And David Simon, the creator of The Wire, he goes on this long ass tweet thread where he's basically like, look, man, like, they're not like, police ain't, the clearance rates are down in Baltimore. The murder rate has damn near doubled. And guess what? Me as a white dude out here in Baltimore, my likelihood of being hurt or murdered has not gone up. The people, these crimes are concentrated in the areas of the most marginalized people in the community. And so people like you can tweet from your nice little apartment and be like, oh, we don't think the police should lock anybody up or arrest anybody, and we need to do away with this, and we need to appropriate the funds of social workers. But like, the people who are experiencing the brunt of this crime wave, man, like, they don't feel like that because they right there in the trenches. And I just think there's so many directions that the crime thing goes. And then of course, somebody else comes in and is just like, cites an article where the people that David Simon championed in The Corner, or whatever, the book that was about the cops that he dropped in 1990, a bunch of their cases are being overturned and wrongful convictions and all of that shit. And it becomes this whole mess. But I just wanted to talk about crime because I want to know where you're at with it, like both the discussion and what like the solutions that are being presented, and just how our audience. I don't want to tell our audience how to think about it, but I do want to offer them with our perspective about what's going on.
I think that the crime issue, I think you're right that it's become one of the more salient political issues right now, more than it was, say, 10 or 15
I can't
years
remember
ago.
the last time it was like this.
I also get the sense that it's just a hugely winning argument for the right.
Yeah.
And a huge driver of people to the right. I recommend everyone to check out an issue of Jacobin that came out earlier, I think last year, where the cover just said lower the crime rate. And it's a whole issue dedicated to crime and the ins and outs, the different debates, the solutions, etc. But I want to read some basic polling numbers on crime that was cited in that lead article, which was called Lower the Crime Rate. And it's pretty simple to me. Here it is. It says polling shows that 86% of all Americans, 86% of all Americans want the police to spend the same amount of time or more in their neighborhood. But whatever conservatives say, that doesn't mean that there's a budding Blue Lives Matter coalition in the country. Americans also indicate that they want a different type of policing. 58% say the policing requires major changes, and 79% think police violence is a serious problem. So, I think it's all right there, I think Americans want police, and they want police to do their jobs and protect them. And they don't want police to just like murder people. I don't know. I think that's kind of the crux of it. It's not one or the other. I think that the twin issues of you can't understand crime without understanding the lack of social welfare that exists in the United States. I think that that's just incontrovertible. I was just in Europe, and in Europe the crime rate is just lower. It just is, especially the violent crime rate. There's some petty, there's petty crime. They'll pick your pocket or something, but violent crime is just drastically lower in Europe than it is in the United States. Europe was not a particularly peaceful country not that long ago. It was really transformed.
Man, they were letting bombs off in Ireland and freaking the UK. Yeah. Come on now.
Yeah. Italy throughout the 1970s was just like a fucking, cesspool of political terrorism and things like that. And I think you can't understand the drop in the crime rate in Europe without the understanding that in Europe they implemented social democracy to a degree that they didn't do it in the United States. The United States just simply doesn't provide as much social assistance to its people, especially its poorer people, than other countries. And I think that that's a huge issue when you're thinking about crime. I did an interview for the Jacobin show back when I was doing it with a guy named Adana Usmani, who I highly recommend reading or checking out that interview or whatever. But he explains why America is so policed or violently policed, why there is mass incarceration, and why the crime rate is so high. Because the crime rate in America is high compared to other developed countries. And it basically has to do with the way the American capitalist economy was industrialized. America, as you know, was a slave society for during the 19th century, right when capitalism was industrializing. And whereas other countries that were industrializing at the time, say England or whatever, was industrializing with its own peasant population, moving peasants from the fields into the factories. In the United States, because there was slavery, they didn't move those people into the factories. So the factories needed people to work. And so they imported a bunch of fucking Irish and Italians and Germans and shit, So the industrial working class that emerged in those times were these white Europeans that really kind of were the driver of the Industrial Revolution in the United States, because Black people were kept in the South. By the time Black people moved north, the party was over, baby.
Deindustrialization.
Yeah, it was just starting. Yeah. And so that's why Black people were kind of shoved into these ghettos in the inner cities, extremely poor with no social services at a time when deindustrialization was happening. And the United States never instituted social welfare. So these ghettos were created with incredibly high crime rates. And it's true. Like if you look at any movie from the 1970s in New York or whatever, it's like it's like it's a war zone out there.
It's a hellscape. Yeah.
So America, that's one of the reasons why America is so overpoliced and put so many people in jail, is because there is just this fucking insanely high crime rate because of that, because of the way the cities in America didn't industrialize with its own native population, created this kind of excess population that was put into ghettos, which basically just resort to crime. So I think like the debate is kind of always so focused on
it's
individual evils and things.
Yeah,
like that,
the debate is always this: either we're fighting crime or we're not. Essentially, we're policing the problem. It's never about what are the factors that contribute to a person becoming the kind of person who commits violent crimes or becomes a thief, etc. It's never like, why don't we address that? How are we producing that kind of citizen? It's like, all right, how do we get the cops somewhere to stop this? It's never like, let's stop it at its root. Where it's, when you talk about someplace like Baltimore, or you talk about someplace like Chicago, or you talk about someplace like New York or whatever, it's hard for me in certain places to be like, yeah, we need to get the cops out of there. Where it's just like, I mean, we're still doing a drug war. Like there's still money in selling crack and cocaine and heroin and fentanyl and all of that. And like policing those industries only happen one way. So there's that. Then there's the like desperation that a lot of these things produce. Like we can't not deal with the social welfare situation and have a situation where, we have this underground drug economy where people know like this is a way to get paper. It's not like they could get a job at the Ford plant, make it 6 figures, get a dope apartment, buy a crib. Those options aren't available. So, and then, it's another thing that you were somebody who hit me to this, the fact that somebody could be having a dope ass lunch in Hollywood, outside somewhere, rocking their Rolex next to a fucking tent city, and it's like literally, like actually literally next to a block where a row of 7 tents people live at. Like they don't do that shit in other countries. Like you don't roll up in a fucking Maserati to eat brunch and drink bottles of wine that cost $200 next to a tent city anywhere else. They don't do this. So it's also that we're putting this shit in people's faces. Like, how are they not going to commit crimes, bust people over the head for this shit?
Well, the other thing is that, so when you talk to police, criminal justice activists will say like, you defund the police and then you move it over to social services. The problem is that if you took away, like if you reduced every single police budget to 0 and put that into social service, it would be a drop in the bucket in terms of how many social services are needed to fix the problem. The problem is that there's got to be some sacrifices made by someone else,
more than just
namely the rich people. Yeah, they got to tax the fuck. Like America is undertaxed. The rich people in America are undertaxed. The state coffers are depleted. Like there's a huge, the cost to fix the issue through social spending is like astronomical compared to the cost to fix the issue, quote unquote, or at least mitigate the issue through
with cops.
Policing.
Yeah,
cops are cheaper. Sad to say. So I think what Americans basically are asking for, but the debate never really kind of addresses, is that people want crimes to be solved. American cops aren't trained to solve many crimes. Like there's detectives.
Nah, this is buy and bust. Buy and bust. Rip and run. Get your stats. Get your OT.
Yeah. So there are some reform issues that are to be done that aren't necessarily about defunding, but like there should be a bigger emphasis on crime solving. Like I think if you look at the percentage of crimes that get solved in America, like they're dropping the percentage. You know what I mean?
And the statistics that show that a lot of the crimes, and like they always tell this famous story in New York City about how they fixed a lot of the crime in the subway, where like they fucking tracked on a map what time and where the crimes were happening. It was like, it's like 15 people just riding the subway and committing the crimes. Like, we lock those fools up, this shit is over. And so like it does end up being like certain people committing all of the, like a small percent of people, very small percent of people committing all of the crimes, right? And so like, yeah, actually getting those people situated would go a long way. Solving crimes would go a long way.
Yeah. Solve the fucking crimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I think the debates, it's kind of a surefire way to win elections is to, that's what's so kind of bleak about the situation is that, some DA somewhere will institute some reform, which probably is good, or whatever. And then someone will commit a crime. And it may or may not be tied to the reform or not, but it's very easy for the politician running against them to tie them to it.
God, so easy.
There's the famous like Willie Horton playbook from back in the 90s, like the George H.W. Bush. That guy actually did commit the crime based off of the reform that I think it was Dan Quayle or whoever it was did, or Dukakis. Whatever. And that was like actually like a guy who did benefit from the reform and then committed the crimes. You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean that it wasn't kind of a heinous thing to do. But right now, you don't even have to do that. You just like, this reform. There you go. Someone's kid got killed. There you go. You can't never do it. So it's dispiriting in an age when the real thing that America needs. Like I don't know. We always talk about it. It's kind of boring, but Medicare for all would fix a lot of crime, fix a lot more crime than you think. It wouldn't fix all the crime. There would be still crime, but it would lower the crime rate. Medicare for all. These kind of big, robust social services. And I'm not talking about like criminal rehabilitation services and all that shit. That shit's a drop in the bucket. I'm talking about less poor people, more opportunity, more secure lives, more stability in the social system. All that shit reduces crime. Yep. So any reform that does that is a great way to do it. And I think if you talk to Bernie, for example, he would say that. He would like if you ask him about crime or policing or whatever, he wouldn't like go into the actual nitty-gritty of policing. He'll just pivot away to like, we need to reduce inequality, we need to like give people more opportunities, and we need to get Medicare for all. And that would be it.
And I think there's a tendency to want to dismiss, quote unquote liberal elites who they have been out loud on their platforms in, your liberal sort of outlets like the New York Times or the Post or whatever, or Twitter blue check people who are just, they're describing American cities as a hellscape, right? And I understand the tendency to want to dismiss those people. But I will say just anecdotally, like I know people in New York City who I grew up with, literally taking the train with them at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, leaving clubs drunk together. And homies would be like, Wos, like this shit is not what you remember. The train station, the subway system ain't what you remember. This shit is fucked. I'm talking about people I grew up with. Granted, granted, some of these people they're black elites now. Like I do have to offer that caveat, but like people that I wouldn't say are predisposed to being scared to ride the train, fam. Like they're not predisposed to overstate what's going on in the New York City subway, and they're just like, bruh, it's something that I'm actively avoiding. Like the crime, the craziness, the unpredictability, the fact that you can't trust the police to do anything about it. Like I've heard these stories firsthand, you know what I'm saying, from a myriad of people in New York City, right? Yeah. So there is the instinct to want to ignore any, sort of lib who's talking about what are we doing about the cities? Like this homeless shit and the crime is fucked up. And, basically we living in fucking New York from Taxi Driver. You know what I'm saying? Like there's people that's going to do that. But I think some of it is legitimate. And more importantly, it's animating how people feel politically. It's turning people more reactionary and right wing.
Totally, because I mean, obviously the suburbanite who's never going to be the victim of crime kind of sees it on TV and all that stuff, and is reactionary because of that. But the actual victims of crime, like as you mentioned, the actual victims of crime, the vast majority of them are the working class, black and brown people. The average victim of crime worldwide is a worker commuting to and from their place of employment. That's just the reality of it. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of frustrating, and it's frustrating to see that, again, the most kind of hysterical people often are like well-to-do suburbanites who will never have to be the victims of crime. But there is a I think it is a contributor to the sort of declassification, if that makes sense, of American politics, and that a lot of working class people are moving over to the Republicans, especially Latinos. You're starting to see that more and more, and I don't think it's indistinguishable from the crime issue. I think it's probably one of the big drivers as well. So, yeah, I mean, listen, pass Medicare for all. That would be great.
That would be a nice start. So we can move on to that. So something that's like fucked up, but equally funny. And that's the Brett Favre in Mississippi story. And I'm not gonna lie, Nando, like when I saw it, I just saw the headline like Brett Favre got caught stealing from the welfare funds in Mississippi to get paid for speeches and volleyball and his daughter. And I was just like, this is not something I really want to pay attention to. And then it became one of these weird things, which is an aside, but like that Ime Udoka situation happened, and there were people that were just like, if you're more mad at Ime Udoka than Brett, it's like it became like this weird wedge issue out of nowhere, which whatever. I just wasn't really participating in it. But, just a little bit that I did skim, and what it seems like to me is that when there's a monopoly on political power, the corruption can be way more brazen. Like when there's just absolutely positively no challenge to the political power of the people in charge, like they can do this type of shit and not even think twice about it. Because the details are just fucking insane. Like you really like this, like you gave this guy $1 million for a speech. And how you
that he never gave,
and how you reconciled it was from the welfare budget. Whoo-wee. But yeah, Nando, you got into some of this. What were your highlights from the Brett Favre Mississippi debacle?
Well, first there's the funny stuff. I mean, it's sad, obviously, but it's kind of funny, which is the actual crimes of Brett Favre, but also many others. I mean, Brett Favre was just one of many. I mean,
what happened was a celebrity, so his name is out there.
Yeah, but they were these people in Mississippi were treating the welfare fund, what they call the TANF fund, basically as their own personal slush fund to give to their friends and pet causes and whatever fucking companies they invested in and whatever. As much as almost $100 million basically got swindled from the Mississippi Welfare Fund, which Mississippi, by the way, is the poorest state in America. Full stop. So and
I think it's one of the only, like, by percentage of population, it's the blackest state in America, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Oh yeah. So for example, there's really funny ones where Brett Favre was given money from the welfare fund to build an indoor football facility so that he could recruit Deion Sanders' son to Southern Miss. Deion Sanders' son is like one of the nation's top quarterback recruits out of high school. And Brett Favre wanted to play so the fucking welfare. So the governor gave him money to build a fucking indoor practice facility to recruit Deion Sanders. It's like the 90s NFL that I grew up on is like, it's coming back, baby. It's Brett Favre, it's Deion Sanders, they're stealing from welfare. It's great.
Somebody find Andre Rison.
Yeah, Andre Rison. Wait, didn't Left Eye burn down his house? Yeah,
she burned his house. Yep, she burned his house down.
How is that not like an 8-part doc?
Yeah, it should be.
Like, let's pitch that. Well, let's pitch that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so there's like all kinds of funny stuff like that. There's the leaked text messages from Brett Favre to the guy from the government, and he was like, "Is there any way the media can find out about this and how much I get paid and how much and where the money came from?" It's like.
Narrator,
Like, that's
the
funny.
media did find out.
They did find out. It's like way more embarrassing than Brett Favre's leaked text messages to was it Jen Sturt? What was the name of the sideline
Jen
reporter that he
Sturter.
sent
Mhm.
the
That he
dick
sent
pics
his dick
to?
pic to
Yeah,
his
when
red
he was
rocket.
when he was playing for your New York Football Jets or whatever.
Yes, he was.
So there's the funny stuff, but then you kind of get to the the sort of broader analysis as to why this happened or how this could happen. And my hot take is that this is all Bill Clinton's fault.
Mm.
Because what this stems from is Clinton's famous, maybe most famous law that he passed in 1996, which was welfare reform, so-called welfare reform, which basically ended the FDR era, the New Deal era, passed by FDR, assistance to needy families program that existed under the Social Security Administration, and which was administered by the federal government directly to the people. And they changed it in 1996 during the welfare reform law to do these kind of block grants to the states, in which they just give the state a bunch of money, and then the state can do whatever they want with it. I mean, they're supposed to give it to poor people, and there's some guidelines they got to follow, but like really, whoever the governor is there and the political system, they just take that federal money. And they're just like, I can do whatever the fuck I want with it. I can build a $5 million volleyball stadium.
That's even worse than the Medicaid mandate from Obamacare, because it's like, at least like, because they got the choice to just straight up say, no, we don't want Medicaid here at no cost to us. We just rather cruelty because we hate the black dude. Like, this is just straight up like, no, here's the cash and do with it as you please. It's not even tied to like a program. It's just money.
Yeah. No, and that's what this was. It's like they were just taking federal money that was given to Mississippi, meant to its poor people, and they were just like, here, Brett Favre invested in a biotech company that he wants to make happen, which is supposed to create a cure for concussions. Yeah, let's give that company $2 billion to boost Brett Favre's investment in it. That's what they were doing with it, and it goes to show, first of all, I mean, just Brett Favre seems like just an odious fucking human being. I mean, Sage Rosenfels, remember the quarterback? He used to play for the Dolphins. He was also Brett Favre's teammate in the Vikings. He tweeted out something like, I've been lucky in my post-playing career that I never stole money from my state's poorest citizens.
It's
I never accidentally did that. Never accidentally did that. But I mean, a lot of this was done under the guise of charity, right? Like Brett Favre has like a bunch of charities for the needy and for kids who were abused and blah 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 blah. All that shit's bullshit. Like, never donate to charity. Like, this just don't do it. It's just not a good. They're so corrupt. It's so easily corruptible. It's so easily manipulated. Like, the money goes to whatever
the percentage of money that actually goes to what the charity is ostensibly about is always like minuscule.
Yeah. So it's just like, and this is like one of the things that people always say about America. It's like, oh, we have low taxes, there's all these billionaires, but we have bigger charities than any other country. That's true. America does have more charities and bigger charities, but it's a fucking grift. Yeah.
Are there do we have a dearth of people that need charity in this country? That's bullshit. Like, if anything, we're overflowing with people that need charity.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the perfect 2022 story in that it's got some celebrities, it's got some throwbacks to the 90s. It's basically the chickens coming home to roost from basically neoliberalism, which Bill Clinton kind of solidified by being the kind of left neoliberal, if that makes sense. Like he was the first Democratic president who was really I mean, you can argue Carter or whatever, but like really it started under Reagan and then Bush, and then kind of was given bipartisanship through Slick Willie. And, the effects of that are being felt today. That welfare reform law doubled extreme poverty in this country, like basically overnight. One of the most heinous things that anyone's ever done in America, which was, our boy Bill Clinton. And
boy, did he play the hell out of that sax on Arsenio Hall, brother.
Yeah.
So
he
good.
Was the first black president.
First black president.
How did they get away with that? How did they get away with that? Like,
He was the first black president because he got his dick sucked while he was at work. Like that was part of it. Like that was the whole part of the appeal. Like, oh, he's like this slick talking, smooth hustler type of dude, which he is and was. Like that's actually true. But that's actually true. But it's it's pretty racist to say that's what made him blackish. Kind of funny.
Yeah. But anyway,
yeah,
I think
read up on the Mississippi grift. Again, man, like the Republicans got that thing monopolized down in Mississippi. It's one of the reddest, most reliably red states in the union, if not the most. It might be literally the reddest state in the union. And when you have that level of unchecked power, this the shit you get, bro. Like, Brett Favre's kid is only going to be at that school for 4 years.
Yeah.
And they're stealing
fucking women's volleyball.
Bro, it's crazy, bro. And they're stealing tens of millions of dollars.
$5 million stadium in southern Mississippi for women's volleyball? Or I guess men's could play there too, but volleyball? Who gives a shit about volleyball?
It's insane.
$5 million? How much could it cost?
It's insane, dude. Insane. And anyway, man, there's your dose of American corruption. We'll be back next week, of course. Become a Patreon at patreon.com/count the dings. It'll cost you a cup of Starbucks a month to do so. Support a lot of the content that we're doing out there. Shouts to my man Sean, producer Sean on the fucking ones and threes. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Later,
bro.